What is up guys, in this video we're gonna turn this synth loop into this. I'm gonna show you some of my favorite plugins to create this awesome synth sound. Let's go. Okay, so I have programmed a simple basic sound in Serum. This is how it sounds. And let's just have a look at the MIDI pattern. So this is the MIDI pattern that I'm gonna use. You can just pause the video and copy the MIDI notes that you can use in your own project. So this is just a simple sound, but I want to add some really nice processing to this sound to really make it stand out. So I don't want to touch on like the sound design of this sound. This is mainly to show you that you can transform rather simple sounds into something really awesome using a lot of creative processing plugins. So I've routed this Serum instance to a mixer track in FL Studio. The first plugin is a favorite of mine, the Neutron 3 from iZotope. So I start by adding a transient shaper with a little bit of attack because I want to push forth the transient of this sound. Just a little bit. And then I go into the equalizer. I roll off a little bit of the low end because this is not acting as a bass. This is more like a synth loop, almost like kind of a lead sound. So I'm rolling off at around 175 Hertz. Then I'm dipping at around 300 Hertz because it was sounding a little bit muddy to me. I'm using a dynamic EQ. That means that it's only ducking every time the sound hits. But it's just a tiny amount. And then I'm boosting with a bell curve at around 3000 Hertz with 2 dB of gain. It's just to bring forth the upper harmonics of the sound. Then we are going into the Decapitator, which is a distortion unit. So I'm pushing the drive rather a lot. I'm selecting the T style. Mainly I'm just trying out these different styles to see what sounds best for me and for the sound that I'm going for. The tone is set to just in the middle, but then I'm decreasing the mix because I don't want this to be like obviously distorted. Sounds like this. Because this plugin can really add a lot of distortion, but it just beefs up the sound in a really, really cool way. So that's why I added it. Then the next plugin is RC20, and I'm using the wobble component because I want to add like a little bit of like fluttering, like wow style effect. So it's kind of like doing this. So like drifting the pitches of the sound, and that just sounds a little bit more like old school to me. Then I'm also using another distortion component, and it's just the air type thing. To me, it sounds a little bit more like it's applying a little bit more of upper harmonics to the sound. Turning down the mix a little bit because I don't want this to be over applied. Again, also turning down the mix for the wobble effect. Then I'm adding the digital to get some kind of bit reduction sound because I just love lo-fi sounds. Then down here I'm boosting the gain input because then I can push more input gain into these effects. Then I'm doing a cut at around 80 Hertz and also a low pass cut at around 8000 Hertz. And then I'm doing like a little bit of a boost with a high shelf with this tone knob. Then I'm decreasing the width because I don't want the sound to be too wide because we're gonna add a lot of stereo effect later on. And I'm reducing the output gain because I don't want this to be too loud. And so I'm kind of compensating with the output gain of how much input I'm putting into it because sometimes when stuff gets louder, we just think it sounds better. So it's just to really like hear what these effects are adding to the sound. And try to put it off. This sounds a little bit more clean to me. This sounds old to me. but in a cool way. Okay, so the next one is perhaps the most important one, and it's a favorite of mine. If you have been on the channel for long, you have definitely seen this plugin. It's the Decapitator 6 from iZotope, from Native Instruments, and this is doing a lot of stuff. So let me just unmute all the stuff here. So the first thing is the side delay that I've put into time into a quarter note, put it to reverse mode, turning the feedback all the way down, and just a little bit of mix, because then we get like this kind of shimmering kind of delay effect to the sound. And I just think it just gives it a little bit more like movement, and I really like that. Next, we have a chorus effect from the choral, and I'm basically just browsing through some presets that are built in the Decapitator 6 and just finding something that sounds really nice and then twisting the knobs. So yeah, this is like the sound. Almost adding like some kind of phasing effect to it. Then I'm adding a transient shaper again. It's a transient master also from Native Instruments, just to boost like the transients a little bit, because I think they were lacking a little bit. So I wanted to have some more punch. And then I turned down the sustain because I think the sound, like the length of the sound was a little bit too long. So I'm just pushed it downwards. And then because I don't want to clip anything, I'm just turning down the gain, because we're adding a lot of like extra volume with all of these components. Nice. Next, I add the vintage reverb, the gold short, with just a little bit of mix, just to give it some room. And these are just so nice sounding. I really love them. Also for like those more like, again, vintage styled reverbs and sounds, more lo-fi stuff. This is amazing. Next, we move into replica, adding some delay on the straight 1/8 tempo. And I think I have feedback all the way down. Then what I like to do is I want to sculpt the EQ settings. So I remove a lot of the low end and also a lot of the high end. Just a little bit of mix. I don't want to overdo this effect. Just amazing. And then because we have added like these delays and reverbs, I tend to like to add a compressor afterwards, because sometimes it just pushes up the sound of the delays and the reverb, so it gets a little bit more present. So I'm using the VC2A, and this is just a really nice warm sounding compressor. And obviously it's also adding some volume, so you really have to pay attention to that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to let you know that I've made a 4-hour online course that teaches you how to make a UK garage style track from scratch. The course is divided into 9 lessons where you learn everything from programming your drums, chords, bass lines, structuring your song, turning that 8-bar loop into a full song arrangement, and also doing some mixing and mastering. I built this course with everything that I wish that I knew when I was starting out producing. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description down below to learn more. Let's get back into the video. The next plugin is also one of my favorites. It's the J37 Stereo tape machine emulation plugin from Waves. I have had this for a lot of years, and I just used I think I can't make the size any bigger. The GUI is like a little bit bad, but it's a preset from Waves that's just called Mastering Fat, Tight and Open Stereo. And I just use this. I turn down the noise level because I don't want to have any like cassette style noise in the audio. And I generally just use this preset. I don't touch anything because it just adds a little bit of like this kind of analog vibe to it. I can't even explain it, but it just adds something cool. So I just put it in. And then the next one is the Ozone 9 Imager. This is acting as a plugin to check the stereo field, but also to manipulate it a little bit. So I'm also sculpting the stereo field. So what I'm doing is that I'm splitting up the bands. So this band here at around 150 Hertz is completely mono. Then I have this area here, the mid-range, low mid-range, up to 1K. And then I have like the upper mids and the super highs. And I tend to reduce the lower mids a little bit and sometimes sound a little bit too wide. Play around with just decreasing this area a little bit, and then you can actually try to boost these upper range a little bit more. For me, I really like to have a sound that also sounds nice in mono, so that's why I'm really like trying to make it fit right in the stereo field. So yeah, you could just add like a lot of stereo width, but then when stuff is being put into mono, you might lose the punch of the sound. So that's what I'm doing with this plugin. So we can have a listen here. Put it to mono. So like the initial sound is still there. So like the fundamental of the sound is still there, but then of course you're lacking like that stereo stuff with the reverb and delay, but the sound is still there and it's still like punchy. So that's what I'm aiming for with this plugin. So we are getting close to the end. I added another Neutron 3, just doing like a high pass filter, and that's because I have added a lot of plugins, and by adding all of these plugins like the Decapitator, RC20, Guitar X6 and the other plugins, they can sometimes add a little bit of unwanted low end. And because I don't want this to have any like really super lows, I'm gonna clean it up so we can have a listen here. You can actually hear that there are produced some lower frequencies by these plugins, so it actually cleans up a lot. So that's a great tip to do this when you are creating other sounds. Adding a lot of processing, just add a filter afterwards if it's not like a bass sound, because you can really like sculpt your sound and make sure that it's not interfering with other elements. So yeah. So, and the last one is just a sidechain. That's actually my processing chain. I really love to play around with these kind of plugins because they just add so much character to sounds. So I really encourage you to try to mess around with different kind of sounds. It could be synth pads, it could be piano, vocals, everything. Just go nuts with the processing, and yeah, hopefully you can try out these kind of plugins and these sound design methods that I'm using and get inspired by them. Okay, so let's do a quick A and B with the sound so you can hear like what it's adding. So this is without anything. And now pay attention to like that upper harmonics of the sound and also like the stereo spread when we apply all of the plugins. This just sounds really nice to me. It just has so much character and grit to it, and I really, really love it. Okay guys, that was it for this video with some of my favorite plugins for doing processing and sound design. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it means so much to me if you smash that like button or even subscribe to the channel. And you should also consider maybe becoming a member of my producer club. I have a lot of exclusive sample packs, preset packs. You can also get access to full FL Studio projects and a lot of other stuff. You can check that out via the link in the description down below. So I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.